Well, hello everyone. My name is Miss Jessica. I'm going to be the official teacher for all of the adult classes. I can't wait to teach you guys and learn just a little bit more about how to use these materials in a more advanced way. So today we're going to be focusing on the artist Jasper Johns. He is a very famous artist, most well known for this flag that you see next to me, the American flag. He did a lot of different ways and techniques to create his American flags. He also did a lot of other different kinds of art, but we're going to focus on just the flag today. So one of the techniques he did was called encaustic. And what that is you take wax, usually placed on sort of a board or canvas, and a big thick layer, and then you carve into it. He carved lots of different kinds of things, textures, maybe even a word or two here and there, numbers and letters mostly. And then he would paint the whole thing. Now, he would do realistic American flags like you see, but he'd also do just plain white. And they're very beautiful paintings. So if you haven't already seen those, I would definitely check it out. So today we're going to be focusing on American flag like you see. We're going to need acrylic paints in the colors of the American flags. We're going to need some oil pastels and our paintbrushes. Definitely grab a pencil, maybe even a Sharpie. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started for today. So just like you see here, we have our American flag. Now, just some things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a very quick gray to our paper to give it a little bit more texture. We're also going to be adding stars, and we're going to have fun with our texture of our stripes. Now, you guys could do, I did the whole Star Spangled Banner. That's one option, but you guys could also just create textures, which I'll show you during class as well. All right, so we're going to begin with actually just our drawing. So let's grab our final piece of paper or our final surface. Maybe you're doing this on a canvas, or maybe you're just grabbing a piece of paper. We are going to be using acrylics today, so please grab a paper that can hold the weight of acrylic paint, can get kind of wet. Bristol board, I figured most of you guys have that, so let's go ahead and do it. We're going to draw first. So everyone grab a pencil. I'm going to use my Sharpie just because I want you guys to be able to see it, but everyone definitely use your Sharpie, or excuse me, pencil first. All right, so we're going to draw our flag. Two ways to do it. You guys can just use straight lines, or you guys can do some wavy lines. I did wavy in the one that you just previously saw, so it looked just like this. But you guys could also do straight lines. I think I'm going to go ahead and maybe do straight lines this time because I want it to look a little more like our artist, Jasper Johns. So first thing we need to do is find the middle of our paper, and we got to turn it side to side horizontal. Very important. If we do it opposite way, vertical, will not look realistic like a flag. But we're going to find the middle, and we're just going to draw a straight line all the way across. We're doing very simple, basic shapes today for our flag because we'll add our detail with our paint. We're going to go ahead and do the blue box in the corner. So not halfway, but a little bit over to the left. We're just going to draw our straight line up. Now, if you're doing the wavy flag, you would still draw a straight line here, but maybe wavy for the middle. Now we have two sections, top and bottom. So we're going to hop to the top, and we're going to draw two lines that go all the way across to the other side. So if you're doing a wavy line, you want it to go in the same direction. So kind of just as your example here, here's my wavy line, kind of curves down. So then my next ones, would also curve down as well. So I'm just going to do straight though. And I'm just going to try my best to make it as even as possible. Please make sure to take your time on this. So if you guys need to stop this video recording to go ahead and make sure those are a little bit more even, totally up to you. All right, we're gonna do the same thing on the bottom. We're gonna do two more straight lines across. Now, Jasper Johns did make his American flags more realistic. So he did actually have all the correct stars and stripes on his. Now today, we're not going to be doing a perfectly realistic American flag. If you wanted to, you totally could. You could take your time, maybe make everything just a little smaller. But what I'm going to show you guys today is just a little bit more of a representation. He did a lot of symbols, things like numbers, letters, targets, and different designs like that. So this is going to be our symbol for Jasper Johns art today. All right, so that's actually it for our drawing. We're not going to do any more than that. But I do want you guys to grab a Sharpie and go ahead and trace all your lines. We are going to use a Sharpie though, because if we use something different, our acrylic paint might smear the black ink. So just be careful. So go ahead if you want to pause the video and Sharpie all of your lines. All right, so we're just gonna jump straight into this, and we're gonna need some paint. Now, we're not actually painting our red and blue yet. We're gonna be using gray. So I have some gray on my plate here. I prepped my plate, but you guys might just have your paint, so squeeze that on there. And I got my water to clean my brush. And I got just a couple different, but we'll probably mostly be using the larger brush today. Maybe grab a smaller brush. You might need that later for a little bit of texture work as well. Now, if you have a towel, go ahead and grab that. Towels are going to be really important to wipe the water off our brush. So if I have my towel, I'm going to take my brush, and I don't want water on it, so I'm just going to wipe that off. All right, so before we do any fun, like actual realistic American flag details, we are going to do a wash, or excuse me, I should say more of a dry brush. A wash is a little different. That would be where maybe you would just take a solid color and paint that over everything. But today we're going to do dry brush technique. Excuse me, I'm going to show you guys, so I wouldn't do anything just yet, just watch. So I'm going to take a brush that maybe isn't perfect. This brush has been used a lot, and so the bristles are kind of spread apart, and it's a little spiky, and we want that actually. So if you need to, just kind of squish your brush, it'll kind of create that shape. Now we're going to take our paint, our gray, and I'm going to get just a little bit on the brush. I don't want a lot. If you have too much, just kind of dab it off on the side. And we're going to use this, and very softly, we're just going to start to paint. It's okay to get big chunks of gray like that because it looks a little, I think it looks pretty cool. It gives it a little bit of texture. And we're just going to continue to do that. So this is a great time. Go ahead, grab your brush, get a little gray, and let's begin. Now, if you don't have any gray, hopefully maybe you have black and white. And what you can do is you can take your white, I'll show you guys, very small amount of white, and your black, and you're going to mix those two together to create your color for today. So I'll take a little bit of white, squeeze it on my plate, and mix those together. The darker, I think the nicer it will turn out. So I would take just a little bit, maybe just continue to add your black in just a little bit at a time. Excuse me, but go ahead and just kind of continue to dry brush everything. Now you don't want a lot of gray. You really just kind of want to keep it mostly white with just a little bit of gray lines everywhere. And I do kind of want to try to get the whole entire paper all the way to the edges. So hopefully you have something underneath, excuse me, that you don't mind getting a little on, because I do want to get as close to those edges as I can. All right, so I'm just going to be adding a tiny bit more, not too much. This will help with our textures. Remember, Jasper Johns would add a lot in his encaustic paintings of his flags. He used wax, but we don't have that luxury right now today, but we're just going to try our best with some paint and paper. All right, so have fun. Maybe you want to just keep adding more. Maybe you want to add a lot of gray. Maybe you want to add barely any. We're just kind of going to keep going. Fun thing I was doing is turning my brush so it's skinny way and just adding some skinny lines like that. Just gives it a little bit different texture. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then you can just kind of go back and spread that around. Now we do need this to dry a little bit. So if you want to pause the video, wait a couple seconds. It really shouldn't take too long because there's not too much paint. If there is a big glob of paint, just take your brush and really smooth it out. So we want it to be flat. Mine's pretty much dry. I got a little bit of gray on me, but not too much. What we can do while we wait is just take your brush and clean it in your water, and then definitely dry it really good on your towel. Okay. So we definitely gotta let that dry. I'm gonna move it up a little bit, and we're gonna grab our oil pastels. So I'm gonna show you guys a little bit of what we'll do, and I'm gonna bring back here our American flag. So what you see on here is underneath, if you look at some of the words, it starts to change color, and that's not just your eyes playing tricks on you, that's actually the oil pastel I put underneath. Then we paint on top with acrylics, and then we carve back into it. So if you guys have some sort of carving tool, you guys can use that. But you guys can also maybe use toothpick would work well for this, or I'm gonna use just the back of my smallest brush. So just to kind of prepare you for what will be coming next. All right, Let's check our papers. Mine's pretty dry, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on now to the next point. If yours is not dry, please do not begin until it is fully dry, but I'm gonna go ahead and move on now. All right, so we're gonna use a couple different colors here. We're gonna start with our blue square. The colors I recommend to use today are gray, as dark as you can get it, white, yellow, and any tans you might have. Some tans or peaches. I'm keeping all my colors pretty light. If I go dark, I gotta be careful. If I use in my blue here an orange or some color that's similar, and I put blue paint on top, it's gonna look super dark and a little bit brown or black. So I just want to warn you guys that you guys can use any colors you really want for your oil pastels, but just be aware that the colors may change when you paint the blue and red on top. So be very careful. All right, so I'm gonna use a little mixture of all of these. You guys can do this any way you want, have fun, be free. But I'm gonna start with my tans and I'm just gonna start to scribble. I really don't wanna worry if it looks perfect because you're not gonna see this anyway. So I'm gonna do a little bit tan. Oil pastels, you just kind of wipe it off if it gets a little chunky or maybe it's kind of messy, it has different colors on it. I'm just gonna take my wrapper off a little bit. I'm gonna add some more of this. This one's a little darker, kind of like that. We'll bring in a little bit of like yellow here. The yellow's kind of fun because it really changes the colors. It makes it a little green with the blue, which I kind of like. And for white, what it does, it just kind of lightens everything. So if you want when you scratch, if you want the color underneath to be a little bit darker, I would use not as much white, but I would take your gray at the very end and just go back over everything. Now again, not perfect. You want to see some of the paper through, but this gray will really darken the oil pastel color. So maybe you want to do a little combo, kind of up to you. So if you want to stop, pause, go ahead, grab different colors. We're just going to fill up the box just like that you see. Okay, now we're not going to do anything else just quite yet. We're going to go ahead and paint our blue square. So I'm going to move all my oil pastels out of the way and I'm going to bring my palette back. Now I do have two different blues here, but I'm going to stick with this darker one. If you only have a light blue, that's totally fine. Just use whatever you do have. I'm going to grab a lot of blue paint. I don't want to be too worried today about straight lines, and we're just going to begin to paint the whole thing. So normally when we use acrylic paints, you want to paint in one direction and you want to make sure that you get a pretty good even layer. But today I'm not worried about that at all one bit. So Jasper Johns, remember, he did the Encaustic, he carved into his wax, his surface was uneven, and we want to try our best to mimic that today. So I want to encourage you guys, I know sometimes it's hard, but don't go back and just keep smoothing it out. Leave some of that showing through at the bottom of the paper or the oil pastel, or you can kind of see now with the lining on mine, some of my brush strokes are going in different directions, and we want that to happen today. It's going to be one of the only times, probably for acrylics, where we'll do this. Today's project is all about just having fun, learning about a little bit of art history. Okay, now we don't want this to dry. Be careful. If you're not done, that's okay, but what I want you to do right away is when you finish, grab your scratch tool that you're going to use, toothpick, paintbrush, or actual scratch tool that you have. We're going to add our stars. You guys can do any kind of stars you want. You can add circles, you can do actual stars, you can scratch it in to fill it in. Maybe you don't even want to do stars. Do something that would represent a star. That's going to be up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and just continue to do my stars. And if you're doing realistic, try your best to get 50. You might have to pause the video. But I'm just going to go ahead and scratch. And I'm not worried if it looks perfect because I want to have that texture in there. Now, I think what I'll do too, I already started with this little circle at the bottom, and I'm just going to go in now and add some more around my stars. And I just kind of like the way it looks. It's bringing a little bit more. It's a little more abstract, which I'm kind of really loving. A little more Jasper Johns. And I'm just going to continue. I'm a perfectionist artist. I'll admit to everyone here, which I think will help my art a lot. But this project and this way that we're doing things helps me realize, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect to look really nice and to have meaning to it. So maybe this is something that'll help you guys at home. You can always do this with other things, other pictures. It doesn't have to just be American flags. All right, now we're gonna hop over to our stripes. I'm moving my paint out because we got to get back to our oil pastels. I'm going to clean my glue brush as well. So make sure you do that before you begin painting. For acrylics, you always want to keep the brushes wet. Otherwise, the paint will dry on there and ruin your brush. All right, so for our oil pastels here on our stripes, you guys can definitely have a lot of fun with your color. We're gonna be red this time. So if you do anything like green or blue or purple, it might make it look super, super dark, which if you're going for it, awesome. But I'm gonna bring back my oil pastel colors here, my tans, grays, whites, and my yellow. I'm gonna bring a little yellow. And I'm just gonna have fun. We're only gonna do one stripe at a time. The reason why is that we just go ahead and do all of them. Our hands will get into them. We go to paint, we might smear oil pastel. So I'm gonna start with my top and I'm gonna be skipping. You guys can kind of start wherever you want. Maybe you have less or more stripes than me, but make sure you're skipping. So we have red, white, and I'm just gonna go ahead and begin. So, I would just do whatever you want to do. I'm just gonna, just like my box, have fun, scribble in some lines. I'm really not worried about what the color is and where I'm putting it. Something to note is try not to get in the white stripe if you can. If you do, it actually might look pretty cool. But I'm gonna try my best not to, just because I wanted to stay that whitish gray dry brush we did. I found the more gray you use for this part, the nicer or darker some of the letters turn out. So that's kind of up to you. But if you want it to be a little lighter, definitely go back with your white and add a little bit of white on top. All right, so I'm gonna just finish up with my edges here. So be careful of, some of you guys might not begin those edges. Go back with a solid color and just kind of color in the edge. If you wanna keep continuing to color, go ahead and grab, press pause. But I'm gonna begin our red. All right, so again, we're just doing one at a time, otherwise it will dry. So we're gonna grab our red paint and we're just gonna paint right over it. If you have these little chunks of oil pastel like I do, leave them. That's the texture we want, just like Jasper Johns. And again, we want it to be really thick paint. So don't be afraid to really lay that on there. If you notice your oil pastel and your paint are starting to squish together, that means you're not adding enough paint. So definitely make sure if you need more, grab a little bit more paint and continue. Only the first stripe. If you do any more than that, you will not be able to carve into it. I am trying to make sure I keep my red inside my stripe, but you can just let it be free, do it however you want. I found that the edges dry the quickest, so really layer up that paint on the edge. Maybe just do like a swipe and then just leave it. All right. So now I'm not gonna wash my brush because I'm gonna be using red for the whole rest of the project. But I am gonna grab my small brush here and I'm gonna begin to scratch the first thing. So if you're doing the Star Spangled Banner, maybe look up the words, or if you know it by heart, go ahead and start to scratch it in. I got about 3 lines for each one. I got a little 4th one down here because I did it curved. Try your best. I also did, I guess, 4 and 4 for those two. But I'm gonna show you guys a couple other ways to do it for scratching. So one of the ways for Jasper Johns is maybe more like a hatch marking look to it. That's one of the ways you can do it. You can even go back and you can even do it the opposite direction if you want. But he just would carve all over his paintings. So maybe have some fun if you want to. I'll do a couple different ones, but you guys can just kind of like go for it. Another way to do it is you could do numbers. You could do 4s all over. You could do letters. You could write A, maybe that's your initial, all over. You can layer on top of each other. Maybe you want to do both. He would just have fun and really carve into all of his paints and his wax. I'm actually going to go back over and add more lines on top because I kind of want to hide it. I don't really want it to be like, oh, here's a number, here's a letter. I want it to be a little hidden for the viewer of my art to see. Now, if you guys are done, go ahead and move on to your next stripe. For the rest of our art class today, towards the end, we're just going to keep doing oil pastel paint, oil pastel paint. So I'm going to just jump now over to my next part. And I'm just going to do the oil pastel. And I'm gonna kind of have fun with the way that I'm doing it, because if I add more of one color, when I go to scratch it, I can see it through. So on this one, I'm not gonna do any yellow. I think I'm just gonna do grays, tans, and then a lot of white on top, and it'll really lighten everything. Just gonna kind of blend that all together. Grab my red, scoop that on there. Careful next to your blue, if it's still a little wet, it might mix with your red and get a little purple. So just be careful, unless you're going for that today. Now for this one, I'm gonna do something a little different if you guys wanna try to, or you guys can just keep these the same. Should get a lot of paint on there. But for this one, maybe I wanna just stick with either numbers or letters. So just choose maybe your 2 favorite numbers, one favorite number, a letter. I wouldn't try to do a whole bunch. Like I've seen people just do 1 through 10 over and over again. It's just kind of cool. Think about what would matter to you. So my initials are J and D. And I could just keep doing that all the way around if I want to. Kind of combine them together. Or maybe even want to start doing them diagonally, or maybe just keep doing it on top of each other over and over again until it doesn't even look like letters anymore. It maybe just looks like a pattern. I'll probably just do that, kind of create something fun. He also was very famous for symbols, like I talked about before. So maybe your symbol is something that represents you. I love the flower, a rose. That's one of my favorite flowers. So you guys could draw little roses everywhere. Or you could do, he did targets, like the Target sign, like maybe you love shopping at Target, I do. All right, I only have one more square or rectangle, here we go, left to do. And again, this one's really large, so I'm gonna try my best to get as much oil pastel on. The more oil pastel you have on there, the better it is when you go to scratch it in, the easier and the better it looks, I believe. This one I'll probably add more yellow and just see what happens. Sometimes it's fun just to experiment. Again, if you guys bring in your other colors, don't be afraid. If you have a favorite color you want to do, put it in there. I'm just going to stick to my lighter colors this time. A little bit more gray. And I haven't done white yet. All right, see how this turns out with my yellow. So I'm just going to grab my last little bit of red here and paint my last stripe. Now there's one more thing we can do at the end. So if you haven't checked out already, stay tuned at the end of class and I'll kind of give you guys some tips on how to just further your project once your paint dries. It won't dry in the time that I would like it to show you, so I'm just going to kind of explain a couple things you guys could do towards the end of class. All right, last little bit here, we're going for, let's do some symbols. Could even combine them together. Maybe you want words with your symbols. So if you haven't already, maybe you've done the Star Spangled Banner, or maybe you haven't. You could add that into it. But that was kind of a fun, creative idea. There we go. And I like that layering. I think it looks really nice in the image. If you need to clean off your brush too, mine keeps getting really full of paint. So maybe I'll just choose one of my favorite lines. I'll just do the last little bit. So you can just start. And the rockets. Red glare. I like that because I'm using red paint. And if you mess up, it's fun just to go back over it. Big ones bursting in air. So it's just a fun way to kind of have your paint look, your textures. So at this point, this would be towards the end of the project. There's things I can't show you because my paint is still wet, but I'm going to kind of explain some things that you guys can do. I'll even show you a little bit maybe on my dry sample. So once this is done, if you want to, you could even do some sort of white stripes. The reason I did it is because I want my textures to be a little broken up by, so it'd be texture, solid, texture, solid, texture, solid. But just like Jasper Johns, he did add quite a bit of texture. So you could do maybe just like a white oil pastel or maybe whites and tans, put a little white paint on it, and then you could scratch some more things in. I also can't do it now because my paint is wet. And if my white touches my red, instantly I'm gonna get a pink. So I would do that at the end when you are done and it's dry. My blue is pretty dry here. So after you're done, what you could do is take a white oil pastel and you can go back and add more. Maybe you just want to kind of trace what you did. And what it'll do, it's a little hard to see here, is the oil pastel isn't like, it's not pointed. So it's not going to sit nicely like a scratch tool would. It's going to be kind of all over the place and go in places you don't necessarily want, but we want that to happen. So maybe give it a try once everything's a little dry. If you don't like it, don't worry. You can always paint it again and re-scratch. It might not look exactly the same, but it is just a technique to do. So I'm just gonna do a couple here. I'll leave a couple alone. And you can do the same thing with the red once it dries. So you can go back with your white, go on top of it. Jasper Johns, we're all about the layers and the textures. That's kind of what we want to bring in. So I recommend if you want to try this again, it would be pretty fun. Maybe you want to do more of a realistic flag, kind of like I said at the beginning. Maybe you want to do this where you have all the stars and stripes, exact same numbers as they should be, and you still are going to do texture. Maybe you want to just do the white flag, like Jasper Johns did. Maybe still do, I would do like a gray dry brush, and then take your white oil pastels, maybe even I was like yellows and tans, color those things in, paint everything white. Maybe for your stripes, you could do like grays and whites, yellows and tans, grays and whites, and then paint it and carve it. It'll look really, really cool. So have some fun with this. It's a really cool project just to kind of get your creativity going. And so thank you guys so much for a wonderful class today. So my name is Miss Jessica. I'm going to be your teacher from now on for these upper level adult classes. So hopefully you guys have either finished or still working on your American flags. And I hope to see you guys soon for the next class. Have a really good day.